Putin has bought them off. Essentially, he has paid enormous bonuses for soldiers to sign up to fight in Ukraine. He's paid enormous death benefits to families who've lost their sons and loved ones in the war. And that has helped to neuter some of the opposition to the war. Having said that, it's a sign of Russia's resilience. The Russian casualty rate is approaching 1 million soldiers, that is dead and wounded soldiers, which is just an enormous number. And I think for any other society that would cause social upheaval and opposition. But you have this strange situation in Russia whereby actually they are taking that money, the bonuses and the death benefits, and just going on a spending spree and, fixing up their apartments and, buying consumer goods, which I think actually, in a strange way, tells you a lot about Russian society and the price that they are willing to pay and, frankly, the value they put on human life.
Typically, a nation suffers financially when they endure war. One would think that the war in Russia would make their ever-burgeoning inequality even greater, but it seems the opposite is the case. Russian security affairs expert Mark Galeotti has written a brilliant piece in today's Sunday Times today, showing how war has actually bolstered the Russian economy in some of its parts. And for its citizens as well, the inequality gap between different regions is narrowing. A lot of soldiers from poorer regions are entering the war, getting better paid and sending the money back home. Or in the worst case scenario, if they do lose their life, their families get money sent to them. Therefore, you're seeing this shift of money in different parts of the country. Well, I'm now joined by Stephanie Baker. She's a senior writer at Bloomberg and the author of the book Punishing Putin Inside the Global Economic War to Bring Down Russia. Stephanie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How has Russia managed to keep its economy going through this war?
Well, I think one of the main challenges of the sanctions campaign has been Russia being a large exporter of oil and gas. And I think that has been the principal bugbear undermining the sanctions regime. There hasn't been enough of an appetite in the West to really take on Russia as an oil exporter because of the cost that would impose on Western economies through higher gasoline prices, higher energy prices for industry. Now, there's been a lot of movement to shut down some of Russia's oil trade, but that has been the principal reason why it's been able to soldier on so long. Having said that, Russia is now facing a real challenge because global oil prices have come down significantly due to Trump's trade war, as well as OPEC's decision to increase supplies to the global market. So you have global oil prices hovering around $63, $64 a barrel. Russian prices generally trade at about a $10 discount. And that is well below what Russia was counting on for this year's budget. Russia gets about a third of its budget revenues from oil and gas. So they are facing a budget crunch as a result of this. It'll take some time to play out, but there is scope finally for the Western sanctions coalition to go after Russian oil revenues without it causing too much pain at home.
And who's still buying Russian oil and gas?
Well, you have a few things happening. You have EU countries like Hungary that are just still importing Russian oil and has had opt-outs as a result of its demands in the sanctions negotiations because of their historic structural pipelines that they had in place from the Soviet period. But you also have a lot of oil that is going to India that is being refined and then shipped globally, including back to Europe. And that has been another large loophole. I mean, India, before the full-scale invasion, was importing maybe 1% of its oil from Russia, and then it stepped in opportunistically and started buying huge volumes of Russian oil, and it now gets anywhere between 35 to 40% of its oil from Russia. So you have the two biggest buyers of Russian oil, China and India, who are really dominating that market and are outside the sanctions coalition.
Stephanie, what about the domestic economy, the Russian people? Many were looking at the Russian economy and thinking, well, once all these big brands pull out, McDonald's and all those big brands that Russians have got used to having in their country, the Russian people will go, oh, hang on a minute, take a closer look at this war and think, is this the war that we want to be involved in? Are our lives being turned into misery because of the cost of this war? Doesn't seem to be happening.
Well, that's partly because Putin has bought them off, essentially. He has paid enormous bonuses for soldiers to sign up to fight in Ukraine. He's paid enormous death benefits to families who've lost their sons and loved ones in the war. And that has helped to neuter some of the opposition to the war. Having said that, it's a sign of Russia's resilience. The Russian casualty rate is approaching 1 million soldiers, that is dead and wounded soldiers, which is just an enormous number. And I think for any other society that would cause social upheaval and opposition. But you have this strange situation in Russia whereby actually they are taking that money, the bonuses and the death benefits, and just going on a spending spree and, fixing up their apartments and, buying consumer goods, which I think actually, in a strange way, tells you a lot about Russian society and the price that they are willing to pay and, frankly, the value they put on human life.
Just finally, Stephanie, are there, in your view, sanctions that have yet to take place that the West could impose on Russia to bring an end to this war?
Absolutely. One of the perverse things that's happened when Trump came into the White House was that the ruble strengthened on the expectation that Russia would get sanctions relief from the White House, from the Trump White House. And that has helped the Russian economy. It's helped cool inflation. There are many things that they could do to close the loopholes that exist. That includes more extensive sanctions, particularly on Russian oil. Full blocking sanctions on state-controlled oil giant Rosneft would take probably anywhere between 10 to 20 million barrels off the market, depending on how they're rolled out. They could sanction more of these tankers, and they could reduce this price cap that they've put on Russian oil, which was set at $60 a barrel at the end of 2022. Now Russian oil is trading at roughly, low 50s. So you actually see this strange thing where Russian oil is going back onto Western tankers, tankers that are using Western insurance because it's compliant with the price cap. So there's plenty of room for them to reduce that, to drive down Russia's oil revenues. They could also tighten sanctions on some of the banks that have not been hit so far, that have been left untouched to allow some of these energy payments to go through.
Stephanie, thank you so much for giving us your time. Stephanie Baker there, senior writer at Bloomberg and the author of the book Punishing Putin Inside the Global Economic War to Bring Down Russia.